Willie D. Live.
Now, are you going to hurt some people in the process? Are some good people going to lose their jobs and so forth? Absolutely. And are some of the targets unfortunate? You know, like the, you know, I talked to a woman the other day. She works at the Library of Congress, and she has this this huge catalog of interviews with prominent black leaders in all different types of genres. And she was telling me how a lot of the funding in these African-American oriented organizations is being cut and so forth. So I think that's very unfortunate because in the process, you're going to lose important cultural things. But as a whole, I feel like the shakeup needs to happen. So I'm not totally mad, you know, with the whole Doge thing. You know, like me and Vivek are supposed to do another interview. You know, Elon Musk is involved in the Doge thing as well. Like, I think that some of this stuff is really going to improve the overall government system after the dust settles. But in the process, it's going to be ugly. But in any sort of real change, you're going to have a lot of people hurt in the process. And a lot of people are going to be unhappy because they've been able to, you know, keep things well for themselves because of the status quo. But ultimately, life evolves. Things change.
Vlad, the dude named a government organization after a cryptocurrency.
Right.
Department of Government Efficiency.
Doge.
Not Doge. Not that don't sound suspicious. Just calling it that already, it sounds like they're playing in our face. Okay, so here's what happens. Trump and Elon said that they were going to cut $2 trillion from America's budget. They're going to get us back to where we need to be, right? In the same breath, Trump has spent over $30 million just in 4 months in office playing golf. How do you save us all this money when the president is spending $30 million playing golf? And how can we take you seriously when you start talking about cutting cost, like trimming the fat, draining the swamp? How can we really take you seriously, bro? And so now, instead of getting the $2 trillion cut, now Elon has admitted that, well, don't look like we're going to be able to meet our goal of $2 trillion, but it seems like it's going to be more like 15% of that $2 trillion.
Okay, that's not bad.
That ain't going to happen. That's not going to happen. You know why? Because every year the budget gets higher. It don't get lower.
Right.
Spending increases. It does not decrease.
Well, inflation also happens, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and he should keep it in mind, too, because they're the ones running the organization. They should know more than anybody.
Right. I mean, look, like,
I don't believe in shaking things up just for the fact of shaking things up, man. You know, like, you got to have a plan.
Shaking things up doesn't always work, man.
You got to have a plan.
But at the end of the day, imagine if Trump cut income tax. You and I would be very happy about this.
Yeah, well, the thing is that whatever Trump does, he's doing it for him and his buddies. Look, I really, truly don't mind paying extra so that more people can have a better chance.
Right.
I really don't, and I've always expressed that.
Yeah, me too. I've always been a Democrat. I've always voted Democratic, from Bill Clinton to Obama. Did I vote for Obama? I just may not have been voting those years, but I supported Obama publicly. You know, I voted for Kamala Harris. I voted for Biden against Trump. I think people forgot who Trump really was because 4 years had passed. And people felt like, oh, you know, something, maybe he's not so bad. And, oh, you know, he's kind of getting picked on, you know, all these court cases, you know, that ultimately he gets found guilty of, but nothing happens. And you got to put it on all the people that voted for him. I didn't vote for him.
Well, I think...
But he clearly won, right?
I think you put
by a large margin.
I think you put it on Elon Musk because I don't think he won. I think it was rigged.
I don't think it was rigged.
I think the election was rigged.
I don't think so.
I absolutely believe it was rigged.
Okay, listen, we can agree to disagree. Here's what I felt. in 2020, people were not necessarily voting for Biden. They were voting against Trump. They were sick of Trump. They hated him. They wanted him out of office. You could have put a parakeet to run against him. The parakeet would have won, right?
Okay, I accept that.
I don't think people were really gung-ho about Biden in the same way they were gung-ho about Obama, in the same way that Trump supporters are gung-ho about him, the same way that people were gung-ho about Bill Clinton. You see what I'm saying? But once the dust settled and we got to the end of Biden's term, then you had Kamala. You know, Biden stepped down. Kamala stepped in. There was not an anti-Trump wave in the same way there was 4 years ago. People had forgotten, people didn't think he was that bad anymore. And I don't feel like there was a real excitement over Kamala. It seemed like there was in the very beginning, but that quickly tapered off. And I also felt like Kamala didn't really handle her campaign very well. I've been very vocal about the fact that she was turning down interviews left and right that could have really helped her, like a Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was right there. J.D. Vance was right there. She said, I'll do a 1-hour interview at my location. And Joe turned it down.
Yeah, but it was that was one of the big things. That was one of the big missing out on that Joe Rogan interview was huge, and that's one of those examples of where your ego gets in the way and pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, no, listen. I remember when I talked to D.L. Hughley about this. His co-host after the interview was done.
Yeah, shout out to DL.
Yeah, that's my man.
Yeah.
His co-host, I forgot her name, and I apologize for that, but she basically yelled at me after the interview. She was like, Kamala is a sitting vice president. She gets to decide how the interview is laid out. Joe Rogan doesn't get to decide the format and so forth. And I'm like, okay. And she decided.
She don't get to decide no damn format. Ain't nobody ever came on my show and decided the format.
But I'm saying, but you could make that stance. If I come in here and say, I'm going to give you 20 minutes, and then I leave, you have no power to stop me from leaving. But what I'm saying is, she made that stance, and he didn't bite. He didn't agree with her, and ultimately the interview never happened. And who did it hurt? Did it hurt Joe Rogan? Did it hurt Kamala?
It hurt her the most.
Right. So there was not excitement over Kamala. There was still an excitement with Trump supporters.
Explain this.
Ultimately, he won.
Explain this.
And let me just tell you, I looked it up. The last time there was a blowout of this proportion was when Obama beat McCain.
Yeah, well, that made sense. This did not make any sense because keep in mind, listen, man, when you look at the results of that election, think back before the actual election day when Trump was making statements like, you're going to vote one time and you ain't got to vote no more after this. You'll never have to do it again. Look, I don't really need your votes. That's what he said. What politician in your lifetime have you ever heard utter the words, I don't need your votes? He actually said that.
Right.
I don't even need your votes. Because you know why? Because he knew he had Elon Musk.
Okay. Listen.
And that AI.
Okay. We can agree and disagree. At the end of the day, we'll never know.
What are you
Unless something comes out that exposes everything, we're never going to know. In the same way that Trump accused all these voting companies, all these voting machines of cheating for him, all that was struck down in every court.
Well, that's a preemptive strike for Trump and the Republicans. That's what they do anyway. They're like, look, I'm going to accuse you of something that I myself is going to be guilty of. And
projection.
And just in case it don't work out for me, this is what I'm going to blame on it. I'm going to blame that you guys did this and that to me and poor me, woe me, and now there's going to be problems. What president in the history, whoever said if you don't vote for me, things are going to get ugly? It's going to get real bad around here. It could be dangerous. I mean, some people may not like that. They might,
I mean,
come
you
on,
probably
man.
go back to the Theodore Roosevelts and so forth back in the day. They were pretty reckless and so forth. But listen, Trump is the social media monster that was created that ultimately was elected twice. And I didn't vote for him. But at the end of the day, the way that he handled his campaign was way better than what Kamala did. He hit up every podcast. He hit up a bunch of people that I think Kamala felt was beneath her. He went on those platforms. And he didn't pull any punches. He let people talk to him as long as they wanted. There was nothing off limits. He really, I think the one thing he did was he let people know who he was, whereas Kamala was always just very guarded the entire time. You didn't get a feel as to who she was as a person.
Yeah, we can go back and forth on that. Man, what are your thoughts on DEI?
On DEI, I've always been pro DEI. I've always been pro affirmative action. I remember being at UC Berkeley when Jesse Jackson was speaking at Sproul Plaza about it when they were trying to get rid of it and so forth. I feel that as a whole, there's nothing wrong with if a certain group has been in power for a certain amount of time, there's nothing wrong with letting a few people from different groups into the system, which will in turn create a domino effect in their families and in their communities.
Right.
Okay, so I went to UC Berkeley. You needed like a 4.0 grade point average and really high SAT scores to get in. So you mean to tell me that if they let a couple black kids in, they have a 3.8? They were close, but maybe not quite at that level. You don't think that that's going to actually create a level of inspiration in those families? They're like, oh, okay, Steve was able to go to Berkeley. Okay, now I'm going to do it also, and so forth. So I've always been for it. In terms of my own company, my own hiring process, I never gave a shit as to who you look like or what color you were or what gender you were or what sexual orientation you were.
Can you do the job?
You're here to do the job. I have gay employees, I have black employees, white employees, Spanish employees, women, men. Like, I never really gave much of a shit. But I understand that in certain organizations, it doesn't work that way. People like to hire who they know and people that look like them and people who they think they can relate to and so forth. And over time, you kind of have these situations where certain groups are left out.
Yeah. Certain groups are left out. I'm going to circle the wagon on that. Have you heard about what's going on in China in regards to education and AI?
No.
So Beijing has mandated that kids starting at the age of 6 use AI starting this fall.
Great.
At 6 years old, they are required to learn AI. This is going to put America back. As far as like trying to catch up to China, it ain't going to happen over the next 100 years.
Well, unless America starts to do the same thing.
They're not going to do the same thing because America is a capitalistic society and they don't care about the people. See, China cares about the people. China wants all of its people to make it. They want all of their people to win.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so
I don't think you could have a communist system that actually does that.
Well, you're in a communist. You're in a communist system now. If you think about some of the things, some of the laws and stuff that we have to adhere to, and some of the things that our politicians do to us, and that we just allow to happen or whatever, they operate like communists already.
I mean, you could say that, but not when it's actually formalized. When you look at, this is coming from someone from a communist system. A communist system is supposed to set up a situation where the money is distributed equally to everybody. Power to the people, workers, drop your chains, et cetera, et cetera. But what has always happened over time is that everyone in the government ends up hoarding all the wealth, and the people end up getting the scraps. When you look at, I'm speaking off the cuff a little bit here, but the number of billionaires in the Chinese government is insane. It's probably the most, when you look at groups as a whole, there's probably more billionaires in that particular group than anywhere else on earth. These people are not elected. The Chinese president, there's not an open election. He is picked by the Communist Party, and he is there as long as he wants to be. In fact, Trump even commented that he has a lifetime term, right? The money all stays in that system, and there's no freedom of speech. You can't criticize the government, or else things start to happen to you. You know, like, for example, where's the owner of, or the founder of Alibaba these days? He's not running Alibaba anymore. He said a few things about the government, and they're unhappy about it. So when you have a system where you can't criticize the government or else you go to prison, there are no free elections, all the money stays within that government system. And then they go and, you know, they strategically let out a certain amount of money. I mean, you got to think, you couldn't even buy homes in China until like maybe 15 years ago. You could not own a home in China. It was owned by the government and you would rent from them. Over time, they try to do a bit of a quasi-system between capitalism and communism, but it's still a communist system. So if you think that it's all just spread out and they care about their people, they care about themselves, their families, their positions within the government, and everyone else could work it out for themselves. So let's just keep it 100.
But would you rather have, let's keep it 100, would you rather have that system where everybody works it out for themselves and you don't have the police targeting a specific group of people? Or would you rather have a system where you have this group of people versus this group of people versus this group of people and all this goddamn violence on a daily basis? Like you live in Calabasas.
Yeah.
You live in that's one of the most richest areas in the United States.
Right.
And still and yet you got to have gates and guards and alarms and shit on your house. Mm-hmm. You got to have alarms on your car.
Yeah.
You got to have all this stuff, you know. So we trade our safety and our health for the right to just talk shit. That's what we doing?
Yeah.
Basically.
That's a big right, though.
It's a big right.
Have you been to Dubai?
Yeah, of course.
Safest place on earth, right?
Dubai?
Yeah.
Nah.
One of the safest places on earth.
It's a relatively safe place, but you can't.
Top 5% in the world?
Top 5.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Top 5% of the world. 95% of the world is more dangerous than Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can leave your wallet on a bench, no one will touch it. I remember I seen videos of women leaving Hermes bags, and they literally film it the whole day. People just walk by, nobody takes it, nobody looks inside. You know, when I was there, you know, with a woman, no one ever catcalled. You know, women and kids would walk around in the middle of the night, totally safe, right? Say some shit about the king. See what happens to you.
If the king has stewardship over the country being that safe, yeah, I'm all with it. Don't say shit about the king. I'm with it. Okay. Look, man, when I lived in Azerbaijan, it was similar. Like, when I lived there, women, I was in Baku. I lived there for 10 years. Women would walk around in, like, pitch dark. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't know where they was coming from, but they'd be fully dressed, and I'm talking about they could have on something provocative. Nobody bothers them.
Right.
No catcalls, no rapes, no murders, none of that.
Right.
And that is because leadership starts at the top and it trickles down. You have a culture of people who care about each other. You know, you care about your neighbor. Your neighbor cares about you and your children. Like, in this country, most of us, we can't even name 3 neighbors. No matter whether you live in a rich neighborhood or a poor neighborhood.
You're right.
Most of us can't even name 3 neighbors. And we wonder why we have all of this dissension and separation.
I mean, look, we're both right in this conversation, right? Neither one of us are wrong. But when you're dealing with the system, like, look, like, you know that if you commit a crime in America, you could get a good lawyer and you might be able to get away with it.
That's right. Many variables.
Right. A lot of variables. Look at OJ. Look at A$AP Rocky. Look at a lot of different people that got away with stuff, and people felt like, well, I kind of thought they were guilty, but okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? I interviewed A$AP Rocky's lawyer, Joe Tacopina. He was going hard that A$AP Rocky had a starter pistol that whole time. I still think that's a silly defense. I don't know of any sane